Everybody, welcome to Houdini Hangout. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Wow, from Brooklyn. It's early in my time zone, but that's because time zones are weird and the world is this weird flat disk and it's not a sphere. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so we've got a cool guest with us this morning. We've got Matt Estela with us, and so we're going to jump over to a little chat with him shortly. But just want to say thanks to everybody for kind of joining outside of the time zone. Hey, Tom, how's it going? Welcome to everybody that's joining this morning. Thanks. Hopefully, this is a good time for those of you that are maybe in Europe or in, who knows where, Asia or even in Australia, where Matt is joining us from this morning. So who's this Matt guy? Yeah, Urban is asking who's Matt. Yeah, he's just this dude. He does some stuff online. You'll see. He's got some. He'll show us what he does and his whole thing. But cool. Welcome. Well, a special guest gets me up at at 7 a.m. my time. So, but anyways, that's enough for me. I will let's bring Matt in and we'll chat with him here. So, hello, Matt. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the stream. Good to have you. Matt and I were able to kind of meet up in person. Obviously I did some stuff with the Joy of Vex from earlier this year, and we were able to kind of do that. I know you helped out a bit with that as well, just like kind of back channel stuff type. No, it was great. It was fantastic. Like pages were getting updated live and stuff like that. Matt was probably being derelict of his work duties or something, but that was okay. I mean, we were just what's work really, right? But yeah, so it was fun, and we were kind of doing that, and we got to meet up in person in LA, which was really cool. So yeah, it's SIGGRAPH. Oh, really? Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me get that. Hold on one second. Ugh, technology. Let's see here. No, that's not gonna be it. Let's see here. Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna fix this. Matt, I'll be right back. I won't keep you on screen awkwardly like that for a second. Let me just fix this up. Yeah, technology is the worst. Hold on one second. I will get this working. I think it's better if he's muted. That's what Urban says. I know, rude. All right, let's see. Let me see here. Okay, I think I know what I'm gonna do. Sorry, Matt. Thanks for hanging on for a second here. All right, let's see here. Audio. I know. All right. Matt, can you say something? Oh, hold on. Nope. I do have you. Hold on one second. If I do, let's see here. All right. I think we've got you, and I did just have you. Okay. Oh, I got it. I see what it is. There we go. That should be right. I think we've got it now. Sorry, everybody. Send. I think we've got it. Sorry, I do this so infrequently. I forget how to do it. Anyways, okay. I think we should be good now. and we have Matt. So yeah, we got to meet in person. We didn't have microphone issues at SIGGRAPH, which was nice. And Matt, you did a presentation that's on the side effects site that was about what again exactly? Wait a second. Sorry. Hold on. Sorry. I keep seeing you talking and it doesn't like want to. Is it working, everybody? Sorry. I'm not sure if it's working or not. No. It's him. It's totally him. Nope. Everybody says nope. Ay, ay, ay. All right, let me try this. Okay, now?
Now?
Yes.
Now.
Now I've got it. Sorry. I keep seeing these. I don't hear that output on my headphones, so that's the hardest part. Anyways. Sorry. Okay. Well, now I'm definitely awake. Whew. All right.
And we're out of time. I got to run. So bye everyone.
Thanks. So anyways, what was your talk about at SIGGRAPH? Let's get back into that.
Right. So my talk at SIGGRAPH was about Houdini. I don't know if you've heard of it. I get to reuse that joke because they didn't hear it before. It was about kin effects. So I've used, I've been sort of dabbling in it for a bit. And then a friend of mine had a few sort of motion and character related jobs. And I was giving him a hand. Oh, someone else is complaining, but I think they might be behind.
Yeah, that's going to keep going. You can keep going. I'll keep going. Yeah. I'll monitor that.
Yeah. But I think it went down well. I don't know. Like I can only sort of judge these things after the fact by the amount of like sort of shitposty comments on YouTube. And this has actually had the lowest rate of shitposty YouTube comments of all my videos. So I feel pretty good about that.
That's good. That's very good. Very nice. Yeah, I know we kind of chatted a little bit even before it, and you were showing me some of the stuff that you were going to be talking about. It was really cool. It was very interesting.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. It was like I said, it was great to get to kind of talk in person. We got to kind of chat a little bit. Luckily, I don't think you got the COVID that was getting passed around at side effects.
Amazingly so, yeah. Like I think I got a booster shot like about a month before, so I think I managed to just sort of
smart guy. Yep. So but well, so you and I kind of had talked about, you sharing today was a little bit about maybe how you get stuff going on the Wikipedia page and how that looks, and then maybe we'll kind of walk through that. I think we were talking a little bit before we got on, and you said that you've got kind of an example that's going to kind of show a little bit maybe of how your thought process is with these things and kind of how that all goes, right?
Yeah, I think so. So do you want to
let's do that. Let's switch over and we'll get you going there. All right, here we go.
Okie dokie. So this is one that I did just post, and even just by loading it up, I thought, as it was loading, I thought, well, this is clearly going to have, like really nicely laid out nodes, and it's all going to be color coded and post-it notes, and this has none of that, which is the exact. This is almost the perfect example of what I never want to post on the wiki. So you lot get to watch me kind of pour through this live and as my thought process, because I think what I'm sort of trying to do with all the wiki stuff is largely influenced by taking notes for myself, which then seem to be useful notes for everyone else, which was like, what is the fastest way to see what is the key technique here? What are the key nodes? Why is it this way and not that way? And so I'm really always trying to make sort of the most reduced version of a thing possible. And it's funny that I see, the amazing output by people like, say, Paul Estevez, or almost every other Houdini person around who can make like beautiful, beautiful finished things. And every now and then I have a little crisis, going, oh man, I should be doing more finished things, but that's not the intent. It's more about the process, the how, the why. So in this case here, I mean, this is almost like I was saying before, a really good example of looking at it and going, well, I don't know, what is actually going on here? Why is it sort of like this? I mean, I think the text that goes with it does sort of explain a little bit of it, but I really want them to be sort of like go hand in hand. So if you can't even like sort of find the entry on the wiki again, you should be able to to read the hip and go, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Like I never really, I guess, thought about how people might be, downloading these or whatever, and then maybe not going back even to see, or, maybe, oh, where was this page? Where was the documentation written out? Like, that's really smart. And it's something that we try to do. I mean, at Side Effects internally with like our education, when we're teaching, when we're helping out like instructors and teachers and stuff like that, is annotating our files really well. So I never really thought about it from that standpoint, right? As someone that has downloaded some of these files, I never really put that together. It's really interesting, like, thought process.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well that has sort of permeated into my work hips as well. So if you were to put any of my I was going to put a bad adjective in there, but I shan't. Any of my production hips, they tend to look very similar to the hips on the wiki. So generally kind of color coded, and I try to really think about sort of the branching structure and why they go this way and not that way, just so that can not only for other people picking them up if I have to hand them off, but even for me to revisit them in 6 months time, 12 months time, where I've forgotten the entire process, but I can dive back into it and go, oh, okay, yeah, I see this, I see that, and that's why. Right. So in this case, for example, the first thing that, like with any kind of hip, as you're pulling it apart, is you start at the top and work down. And the first thing here is I would look at this and go, well, why have I duplicated this whole flow 3 times? This seems silly and stupid. And I go, so it's almost all the exact same setup, apart from like the switch down here. Well, clearly that's dumb. I mean, surely this should just be, so I think what I did before, that's right, I'm on a Mac, the keyboard shortcuts are different. There we are. What I thought the first thing I'd do is I would, take this whole setup and getting a hang, there we are, and just move the switch to the top, because that just seems to make way more sense. So I do that, and then I blow away these guys. But I think even just in terms of like doing this setup, I realized what the problem was, which is that if you are sort of playing through it live, the polyreduce, when it's run after the switch, everything becomes time dependent. So if I were to keyframe this there and there and there, do what I keyframed on? I do. You can see that as I sort of let it play through, you can see that now you've got the dreaded green clock of per frame dependency. But as it plays through, it's now like hellaciously slow because it's having to polyreduce every single frame. And I thought, okay, right. So I immediately ditched my rewiring of this and went, okay, how can I make it very clear that this is why? So I think the first thing I'd do is I'd say, well, these are all sort of a piece. These are all doing the same thing. So I would also color code these all together so that they're very clear. Then have a post-it note that goes with it that is also the same color, because that way it's all clear that they go together.
Right.
And I'd say something like, prep the geo. Let me go closer so you can see what I'm writing. Note that this looks complex, needlessly complex, but it is all to avoid per frame cooking. So it's all run before, capitals letter for emphasis, before the switch node below. So there you go. So that's like nice and clear of what this is doing. Maybe I'd go in more and say, prep the geo to for to ensure they're all the same size, poly count, etc. There you go. So that's now basically what it's doing. This is an important step, so I'd make that the next color down. What I'm trying to do lately, which I've already broken my rule, is just because I would at first start to go, well, green is simulation, so these should all be green. But these other nodes here, is that like a light green or a dark green? And get all kind of panicky. Let me just go, you know what? These are the first nodes, so these will be a red. And these are the next nodes. So these are going to be what's another color that's kind of different? Let's go that burgundy one. And I just work through this list. Scatter the points to use as pop source. And make that the same thing because it's about the same thing, and animate it. And then over here, I'm going to define this, say that this is similar but different. So make it brown. I'm going to say animate the geo switch at the same time to be used in pops downstream. And then that aside and annotate this one. And because this is obviously so minimal, I probably have to break this out and give myself a lot of room on this guy, because I think this is where the bulk of the work is. Or is it? No, it's the pop tracks is where the heavy lifting is going. So I would highlight that guy and say, heavy lifting node here is happening here. This makes the blah 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 blah. This stuff. So it's trying to just make it very clear at a glance what's going on. So even now already, this is easy to understand straight away what's happening. But oftentimes I will do this and I will go away and come back to a setup and go, this isn't as clear as I would like it to be, and I will reduce it down again and make it simpler. Yes, Invoke, I should be using Invokes. Thank you, Tom.
I know Tom's getting all technical in the chat here that he should be using Invokes. And
yeah, and I am getting into Invokes. I did a sweet Invoke setup for work. You would have loved it, but in this case, but also, and that is a good point in terms of what am I trying to demonstrate? And I think Invokes is still a little bit kind of semi-advanced. And I think if I were to pull an Invoke setup into here, if people are already trying to learn SOPs, that's like another layer of fiddle that I try to avoid.
Well, yeah, I mean that alone would make people have to go, okay, what is this thing doing now? So you're adding another level in there that people are trying to understand. So even if that was the most efficient way of doing it, it is that isn't always going to be the best way of learning maybe how X, Y, or Z performs, right? Someone's asking what an Invoke is. Exactly.
See what you've done, Tom? See what you've done?
You said it.
There is a really good video by Paul and Bruges about it. Let's see if I can search YouTube without bringing up too many awkward search results. Paul Houdini Invoke.
Yes, I've seen this. Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
So if you look at this one, if you maybe can I put stuff in the chat? Will that appear in the?
You should be able to. Give it a shot. Yeah, give it a shot.
Look at that. This is really good. So it's like sort of it's like an HDA without using HDA, and kind of Paul explains why sometimes you use HDA, sometimes you would use separate nodes, but this is somewhere in the middle. It's quite useful. But yeah, this felt like a sort of a step too far to throw into this particular setup, so I've left it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
So just to give people a little insight, like an Invoke is basically a way to be able to have kind of turn a whole block of nodes into a kind of like one piece of code that runs, and then you can kind of tell it to run at certain points in your network. So
I kind of remember how to do it. It's like you make
it's definitely very fiddly, and
it's a compile block, and then you so you make
exactly. So if you've ever seen these yellow blocks inside of things, those are compile blocks, and yeah, exactly. This is the one thing that is always like a little tricky is that you have to use nodes that are compilable. If they're not compilable, that will throw a wrench in everything. And I don't know if you even have that flag on. There's like a little flag that allows you to see if something is compilable or not. And yeah, so in that case, you have to name your. I think you have to name your input and a couple other things. And yeah,
Yeah, it's a
it.
bit of a faff to set up. It is handy, but I've not. Yeah, I use it for a very specific work thing where I had like a quite a long involved pre-setup step for some work, and I thought, you know what, Invoke is good for that, but it felt like a step too far for this. So
Yeah, it's
I,
very similar to a compile for each. It's just that you can actually call that at certain places, like in your network. If you needed to do something 20 times on a bunch of different spots in your network, you can do that. So then there's invoke compile graph, and that's like black magic and weird, and
yeah,
it's all crazy.
yeah, something like that. There we are. Yeah. So now, if I had a box, and I can make this thing run on the box. See if it actually works. That doesn't work. It's something.
Yeah, it's
Edits and
similar
stuff,
to
but
that. I think it's like you have to do some naming, and there's like a few little things. But yeah. Anyways, see, now we're off
I'm really
track, and now we're just
drinking here now. I can't be bothered.
oh
to do
yeah,
this now.
have a
Jesus.
drink, chill out.
It's Sunday night. Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'd start to go. There is another one that I've been working on that is it? Yeah, this guy. So this is one that I'm going to post that I promised I'd post in the middle of the talk, and I still haven't done it yet. So this is the one where it is like the actual setup itself is small. It's like sort of 5 nodes, but I end up taking like a few nights of just doing kind of like this and just staring at the screen, trying to go, is this the most elegant way that I can demonstrate this idea? And even then, kind of like trying to get the right amount of just on the borderline of kind of irritating whimsy, as well as being educational. But then also, I love using the Paul and Louise test studio because I like to make fun of them. But then remembering, but not everyone has labs. How do I do? So this is kind of where this one's at. So this was I mentioned in the Hive thing this idea of like being able to make kind of corrective post shape stuff for rig geo. This is a tip that I got from Side Effects. I think Henry might have shown me this trick, where the idea is you have a character that's rigged, and you put it into a pose, but then when you sort of like look at the actual sort of deformed result, you go, it looks a bit there. How to fix it? And normally to fix it, your intuition is you just want to go in. Let's see if that works actually. But put down in edit stop at this point, and try and like actually sort of sculpt on it. It does it like so I can go in and tweak points and do things. But then the question is, how do I then get this result back into something useful that I can like sort of blend shape on and make sure that it works in all cases? And it's not intuitive. The challenge is that whatever deformation you do, it's going to be relative to the skinning information, so that you have to be able to take into account the skinning relative to the joints, and the joints relative to the rest pose versus where they were reposed to when you sculpted it, and kind of inverse out those changes. So the right way to do it is you would go back to the underformed state, sculpt on that, and you'd be like sort of sculpting in here while you're looking at the deformed one. And it becomes a bit of a funny dance where, in the underformed state, you might be moving something up, but then post deformation, it moves right. So it's this kind of a bit of a weird, like you're trying to sculpt through mirrors. It's strange.
Right. Okay.
This workflow kind of avoids all that. And so the idea is that, so I've got Louise here in its default state. I can just go in and straight and sculpt it. So now it looks swole. Good for Louise. And then these 2 nodes here is the sexy meat of it, where this is basically what I would have had to have sculpted on the rest pose to make it look like that when it gets deformed.
Right.
Now, admittedly, there's not that much of a difference, but there is like a few little subtle things where I was trying to also like, if you look at the original, you can see his wrist is like a little bit sort of naff, and I've tried to sort of to fix that so I can toggle this one by part B. I've used any. So you can see I've done like a bit of a fix to his wrist and a bit of trying to smooth out this deformation through here. And I want to capture all of that in a bind pose that I can apply back to the original geo. So the trick is, because I really glossed through it quickly, the idea is that before the deformation, you store a 4x4 matrix onto every point, and you have to tell kineffects that this is an attribute that can be deformed by kineffects. So I define an empty transform. I then make a proper empty transform. Let me make it bigger for you. Which key is it? This one? Nope. This one? Nope. This one? Nope. This one? Nope. This one. That one. There you go. So it's literally making a 4x4 identity matrix.
Identity, yeah.
So if you look kind of over here, you can see this is all reset out, this X form here. Then because I had to use an attribute create as a transformation matrix, then that is enough to tell the joint deform that yes, this can be altered. So if I jump down to here, you can see that these values are now all kind of screwy. If I jump across, you can see that these are now storing the relative change, meaning that when I edit it, this is now essentially now stashing the transform that will be used to pull it back to its bind pose. So then I copy those positions back into the kind of deformed one, and then I can use a transform by attribute in invert mode, which then resets it back to where it should be, plus the offset. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to actually look at and play with than it is to actually kind of explain
it. Yeah.
But this is why I've been staring at this for 2 or 3 days now, going, how can I make this simpler? There must be a way. And what exactly are the notes I need to put into this thing to make it sort of clear? So it's funny talking this out loud, because this is, I think, the first time I actually explained this process out loud. Normally it's all just in my head late at night, kind of staring at these files going, I want to share this information. It's really useful and handy, but how to make it simple, how to make it clean. This is as clean as I got it so far, but I think it can be cleaner again, and I'm not sure what the fix is. So there you go. That is a little boring insight. This is the final animated pose I had him do, because I think that's just how Louise acts in real life.
I think it's really interesting, because I think what I'm like, what you've kind of said a few times is like, it's all about kind of boiling this down to its like most basic essence, right? Of like what it is you're trying to kind of capture. And a lot of times I think just like anything that can be really easy to do if, like say you're doing like art or something like that, where you can do maybe the really complicated thing, like really, fancy, whatever. But if you're trying to do like a more stylized version of something, or a more like boil something down to just strokes or just something like that, that can actually be really difficult to do. I was actually having kind of a conversation with with my wife about doing like, characters and stuff like that. Like if you're trying to do these expressive, just single curves and things like that to express like a movement or whatever, like that can be really hard to do versus like, oh yeah, if you just sketch every single detail, like, yeah, it's probably in there somewhere. But to actually be able to clearly kind of define it this way is definitely tricky. It's a hard process to work through.
Yeah. And I think I've just got sort of experience at doing this now long enough that I have an intuition for, what is, when this is like sort of worth posting. But oftentimes it's just like when I'm just like, I'm rushed and I don't have time to really tidy up. I'll just send it. I saw a question about saying why do it this way? Why not just do it purely in the wrangle? And the answer is this: if I turn this one off for a sec, you'll see straight away that the joint form gets an error. So even though I've got the same X form, it looks exactly the same. Defined just purely in code, but the joint form says, well, I don't know what to do with that attribute, and so it just says I'm just going to ignore it. So there is the command, which is the set attribute type or something like that. Yeah, down there. But I can never remember how to use it. Whereas,
right.
So I find it easier to use the attribute create, and from here you say the type is of a whatever, and so this is a transformation matrix, and that's enough for the joint form to go, oh, I know what this is now, right? And I will now deform it for you.
Yeah, exactly. And does that adds the little like the parenthetical thing in the info that pops up there? You can kind of see that changes how it looks right in there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
right
Yes.
now
So,
it's just
so,
a
so
16 float.
it does. Yes. So that is a 16 floats, but with it on, that now becomes a matrix.
Exactly. So that's what you're setting basically, and that's what that function would do in the attribute wrangle. But in this case, again, for simplicity's sake, you have it more discoverable in that node, and you could say make sure that you could name that something that's more clear, like set the type to a transform matrix or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, even just sort of thinking out loud, I might even do a thing like just set attribute type in for sorry, it went autocomplete. I forgot it commented. God, attribute. I probably shouldn't have drunk. And it's
No, we like drunk coding. That's fun.
hooray, thank you. 0 point name type. Okay, so 0 point. The name is X1, and oops, also quotes, and the type is matrix. Let's see if this works. Yeah, so that works, but that's just hard to type, and I don't want to be hard to type. So what I might do, I might just like leave that commented in there saying, this is how to do it if in code, if you call.
Yes, yeah.
Do it in code if you're cool. There we go. So I now solved all problems. Thank you, HiveMind, for helping me through this example.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, because like you're giving that information, but you're kind of letting it be discoverable in a more, like a way where you're like, oh, somebody might go in there and see that there's a wrangle and be like, oh, could I do this in here? And then go, oh yeah, look, it's right there. And you could kind of discover those things that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other side of it, which is nice about the written formats and the kind of downloadable HIP files that can be updated, just again for me, because I'm lazy, is if I did something like that without the code version and someone wrote in to say, hey, why don't you do it in code? I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. But I can just very quickly dive in, version up the file, update the text, and it's out there again. Whereas I've almost tried. No, I've done video tutorials internally for studios, and when someone points out a thing like that, I just think, oh, for fuck's, okay, fine, yeah. And you got to go back and re-edit and tweak things and do those jump cuts, and it's like I just don't have the patience. I've worked out my kind of like limits of kind of interest versus time versus energy, and this is perfect for me. So like one day maybe I'll become, I'll be suddenly enthused to get back into teaching full time and do it as an online course thing. But I think my just hatred of editing will mean that's unlikely to happen.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm in the same boat where I'm like, that's like always in the back of my mind. There's like this fear of like, oh God, somebody's gonna write something and be like, hey, this this like 20-part course that you were doing, like there's this issue that keeps happening throughout this, and then you're like, oh my God, like that took me a month to do and I don't want to go back and do it. Like that is always in the back of my mind. And I'm luckily there's a lot of checks and balances when you're on a team, right? And there's people that could look at it, but it is always in there where you're like, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. And I think that is also kind of funny in terms of recognizing my lane and my, I guess, what's the word, my accountability, which is that the wording on the wiki, especially for people who wanted to sort of support me through Patreon and PayPal, used to be very aggressive. Now it's less so, but it was largely saying, like you're paying me. This is, you're putting money in in my busking hat, and that's it. I owe you nothing. You get no support calls. You get no like sort of oh, did you do this? No, fuck off. Because I just can't be bothered. And so that's, I think, like the key thing holding me back from doing any like sort of like really proper long form tutorials, or from like working to side effects doing docs. I just don't want to be accountable. This way I get to just like do what I want. I help as much as I can be sort of like bothered to do. But anyone who gets like particularly sort of snippy or nasty, I just go fuck off, and I can
Yeah,
ignore them. So
exactly. You can kind of just brush
yeah,
them away and just be like, yeah,
yeah.
you didn't. I
But for the
have
most part,
no.
people. I was just going to say that people, for the most part, like 99.999%, are very nice, and they're very appreciative, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's, yeah, I mean, it is always nice to kind of be able to just kind of put your thoughts and ideas out there and just kind of say, hey, like this is what I've got. I mean, heck, that's kind of what this stream is for me in a way, like where I can kind of just
Mhm.
say, here's some ideas that I have. Like, I'm not trying to say that this is the only way that you can do X, Y, or Z, but this is what I've kind of found and this is what I'm doing here, so similar.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's funny. I was going to mention the Joy Vex stuff, because even that one as well, sort of, I look back on it and go, wow, that's actually like a really nice resource I made, and I would love to say that it came out of like pure uh, altruism and a lovely warm place in my heart. No, no, no. It was that I was getting tired of answering the same questions over and over and over, and I wanted to refer people to like some sort of Quicksite guide, and it just didn't exist. Like everything was
Right.
either like too low or too high pitched, and nothing was sort of this like, I know enough about Houdini. You don't have to show me, how to make a camera or how to make a pig. I want to jump from being comfortable inside SOPs. Let's say everyone's using kind of wrangles. How do I get conversant in that? And so I kind of forgot that this page here, this outline, was me impatiently one night, just in Notepad or something, just going, oh, okay, fine. Like if I were to make like a guide over 20 days, what would I do? Well, it'd be roughly this. And like the first day would be like, basic assignment. The next day would be blah. And it never changed. Like, this is exactly like I just blatted it out very quickly, saying this is kind of roughly the order of which I learn things, and that I think is kind of important. And then I just dove into each topic and just wrote down as much as I thought was sort of appropriate for that, just to get like a flavor of it, a taste.
Yeah.
Um, and weirdly, it's worked, and people find it really kind of useful.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask, in terms of like when you did the video version of it, like how did you find it? Did you get a sense of it being organized, or did you get a sense of it being this like a rushed list of just concepts?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. No, I definitely found it to be really like, it seemed to flow really well. And I think just the fact of that, like you saying that you wrote this all in one night was definitely not like, not all the whole thing, but just this outline in one night definitely wasn't like, oh, this feels like, why is it going in this order and this, like, it felt really well thought out. And I'm guessing that's probably a little bit because you've had these questions dozens of times from people in different kind of situations or whatever, and you kind of kept going, okay, well, I always have to tell someone this, and then I tell them this, and then I tell them this. But I mean, my guess too, like in all of this, is that like this probably speaks to some of the ways that you kind of start to process through teaching too, right? Like you start to think with a teacher mentality where you're like, okay, this is the best way to start this. And then they're going to have this question. So I'm going to head them off with this, and then this and this. And that kind of, it felt really organized. And like even the examples and stuff like that, I'm guessing because you kept it within a certain framework of like, okay, these are the types of examples I'm going to do. I think that made it so that people, are able to kind of walk through it and feel like it's all really connected in a way, I would say.
Yeah, I think you got all that, which was awesome that actually came through. I'd say the other influence that was interesting, especially in terms of everyone got to sort of see it again for the first time in the way that I saw it in his studio, was Matt Ebb. I have a very distinct memory of when I was first dabbling in Vex, and I was kind of stuck on a problem, and at various points during the show, my kind of key suckers, who were the main people I was hassling for kind of advice, Matt Ebb got me for that week. And I said, like, how do I do this? I want to now try this, and it's not working. And he kind of shot me a kind of a mixture of sort of bemusement and just like withering, oh Jesus. And he said something like, "You did do maths in year 7, right? You are aware of like kind of sine, cos, tan? Yeah, come on, you've done this." And it was just such a kind of a very sardonic Australian put down thing, but coming from a nice place. But there was a sense of like, you should know this. This is kind of it's not beneath you. If you made it this far, you can do it. And I thought, oh yeah. And then that was when I started to like just do a little bit of homework and trying to revisit all these kind of basic concepts. It was largely just kind of vector algebra and dot products and cross products and stuff. And it's funny how you see it come up time and time again of people going, oh, code and concepts of sine, cos, tan, dot products are scary. It's like, it's not really like, and I think once you can see like practical applications of these concepts, which Houdini makes so easy to see and to visualize and to play with. And I love that the sense of the kind of like sort of tangibleness of it.
Yeah.
Everything kind of flows through much more quickly. And so that was where I think trying to remember his sardonic gaze of going, come on, you can do this. And trying to get that just clarity of thought, which he's so good at. And I think if you haven't watched it yet, and surely everyone's watched it, Matt's amazing talk he did for this year's SIGGRAPH about his 4-dimensional explorations. And it's just amazing where he just takes you through it step by step. And he just led down this ridiculous garden path of mathematical insanity that he ended up in. But it's people like him, just like great reference points, just kind of inspiring of just how clear you can explain concepts.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because like that was something that was really true for me too. Like when I was getting into Houdini, which is fairly recent, honestly, but like, like getting into vector algebra and getting into, that like linear algebra world and also code, like this Houdini was my first experience really in either of those spaces. I mean, I knew a little bit of like, okay, yeah, there's graphs and things like that. I'm not sure if maybe my US math let me down a little bit or whatever, but my courses in high school or whatnot. But we didn't really do a ton of like past like really basic stuff. And so for me, this was kind of like, oh man, I got to like brush up on it. But you're right. Houdini makes it so tangible because you're seeing all of these elements like visually, right? And we've talked about that, with education stuff a bunch, where it's like, for if you're doing programming, if you're a computer science major, like, yeah, you could go and work on like, databases and things like that and do all this crazy stuff, or you could come in and do something visual like this. And like, this is like, you can program Houdini, you know what I mean? Like you could do all of your stuff in programming. And like, I think in some ways for some people that can be really scary, and for other people it can be really freeing to be like, oh wow, I could do something really interesting with this, like really esoteric, like programming stuff that I know visually, so it's interesting. It's a very interesting like entry point for a lot of different people. Like I gave a talk to a bunch of computer scientists, like computer science majors, and they were like, oh wow, this is crazy. I never thought about this being a thing. You know what I mean? Like that you could program visual stuff. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, another two sort of data points that I just remembered that are also kind of relevant. When I sort of joined Matt Ebb and Roger Franson and Raf at Animal, and I was trying to sort of like pick up some of their setups, and I think that was the version of must have been like Houdini 13 or 14, and I think they had only just put out Wrangles then, and I was surprised that Wrangles were that late in the day. But I think prior to that, you would put down a VOP network, and then you put down a snippet inside there, and that's how you would do it.
Yep.
And then they went, let's just try and sort of like wrap it up so that it's all just like exposed right from the top, and you just get coded and you play away. And I was going through their setups and seeing Wrangles every like sort of second or third node, and most of the time it'd be like like 1 line, 2 lines, and I remember very clear thinking, well, never touching them. That's clearly, a level of kind of like Houdini clever stuff that I'll just never know. And 6 months later, it's like, I love this, ha ha ha, and coding away and being the Vex nerd that we all love to hate. But then at some point, a bit later, Animal did work experience with kids in high school, and I got tapped to help with the whole sort of like Houdini effectsy stream. And there was the first time that they'd used Houdini. It had always been mine just because it was easy to set up kind of labs for doing it. And I remember kind of pitching, saying, I think I'm going to do just wrangles and nothing else. And everyone went, you sure? And I went, yeah, I've got a hunch that I think in terms of like getting kind of results quickly and letting kids like play with ideas in 3D without getting sort of caught up in nodes and trying to understand, even trying to find nodes. We'll see how this goes. And I was amazed at how quickly they picked it up. A class of like say 30 kids aged between like 16 and 18, and you get like a couple of typos, or they managed to be visualizing the wrong node somehow, whatever it was. But once they all kind of got on board, and I'd say, okay, so at the moment we're doing like p like cd is equal to p times 5, but let's now wrap the sine function. Like, you guys all know sine, right? And they go, yeah, and kind of show them the sine waves. Go, right, now this is like times 10, but make up your own numbers, or you can get to x and y separately. Try doing that. Why don't you try adding, subtracting a number? Why don't you try subtracting time? And within 20 minutes, every kid had a completely different thing, and they're all like this crazy, blobbing pig's heads and just doing all kinds of like crazy damaged stuff. But it was just like they went from like a simple concept to just like exploring whatever it was so quickly. And I thought, why isn't maths taught like this in school? I just got to be so frustrated. And I'm watching sort of my daughter struggling through high school maths now, and just like concepts that I'll see a thing, and they did like a little bit of kind of a little bit of sort of linear algebra, and I go, and I would kind of show her stuff, but then it's gone in like a week and a half. And I go, but there's so much fun things to explore there. And it's just that sense of finding something visually interesting in the maths and the concepts. I just found like really depressing that they just seem to just like kind of glide over it. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something, I mean, that is certainly something that we're going to, that I'd like to see more of us, as a company, I guess, as Side Effects, being able to kind of be a part of more, and be a bit more present in high schools and things like that, where students are in that kind of impressionable kind of stage of being able to say like, okay, like I'm learning this math concept, but what else other than this one specific mathematical world does that relate into? How does that work? And I know they're starting to get into like coding and programming and things like that, and I think being able to have that visual on top of that I think could be really interesting, and a really powerful like way of being able to learn.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think what I'm always kind of frustrated by is either the concepts of teaching coding in school is either completely dry. So, they're just going straight into like, here's Python, here's how you count to 10 in Python. It's like, why would anyone care? Or it's so dumbed down, like, they're using Scratch and blocks and stuff. And it's just like, make this all cartoon, cat move across the screen by like 5 pixels. And it's like, or I could just go play Fortnite where it looks beautiful and it's running at 90 frames a second. It's a glorious lighting.
Right.
Why would I bother with this kind of shit? It feels like there's something better. And I don't know what that is yet. I mean, maybe it's Houdini. I'd love it to be Houdini, but I don't think it's Houdini.
Yeah.
But I think some of the concepts that I hope they were intentional, but I think like all the best things, I think, Houdini and Side Effects stumbled across a couple of things that just clicked and people really resonate with. It would be good to, there's some way to, really study that and analyze it and go, how can we apply this stuff in education for everyone? Maybe that's my other, when I rage quit the industry, that'll be the path that I go down.
Right.
But not just now.
So I guess that's interesting, because I think that might maybe lead into some of these other, like some of the other things that we kind of chatted about ahead of time. We were talking about, maybe about like how people learn, or I know we've talked about that a little bit, and you had some
Mm.
stuff here about mental models and different things like that. Like maybe this would segue into that a little bit with like how people learn, and like how to best maybe tap into that on some level.
Yeah. I mean, the other one I was going to sort of probably reference while I blather on about some of these concepts is this thing here. So
Switch back
the
over.
the other the other reference point in terms of education, which again came out of my daughter and her maths, was um, my wife did some reading and found a few people were talking about a certain book. So I can find it, called Make It Stick. Hopefully this will come up with the right thing. Yeah, this one. So this book, and I got it and read it and just went, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been doing with the wiki and my general learning. I just didn't know that there was like an actual name for it. I'm going to get rid of Louise. He's weeding me out there. New, discard a new. That's better. And there was a really nice summary of it. So if you don't want to pay the money, but you should pay the money. If you go onto YouTube and go Make It Stick, the author has done a nice like 1 hour summary for a course. This one here, Cindy Couchman, Make It Stick. And there's a few like sort of key concepts in it. And I thought that they all related really well back to kind of what the wiki is and the way that I've kind of learnt CG, and especially Houdini, the way that I've kind of helped to teach others. And it's kind of like there's a few concepts rattling around in my brain, but one of them is, I guess, like the frequent, regular short bursts of practice is the main thing. So, I think she talks a lot about how like sort of the standard for high school education these days, and even for university, is that people just have to like you pull out textbooks and you highlight passages and you just like read, you look at the bits that you've highlighted really hard for hours on end, and then you try and sort of somehow recite it back verbatim later in an essay, and provably that doesn't work. Whereas her kind of tack is saying, it's basically just it's frequent testing, frequent self-testing. And so, there is no if you hear about a concept, you read about the concept, say it's for Houdini, you want to learn about like particles. Well, you go watch, some shortish tutorial, but you put it away as fast as you can and you try and test yourself. Have I actually memorized the bits, the really important bits from that thing? Like you have to actually try it yourself. You have to put it in practice and exercise your brain. And she really emphasizes the point of like you have to fail. Like you almost have to try it before you're really confident. Like knowing you're gonna not remember it, and you have to like struggle through the pain of not remembering and feeling bad about it, because that seems to like sort of almost like prime your neural pathways, so that when you go back and look at the answer, you go, of course, I knew it was right on the tip of my tongue, kind of thing. And then you do it again. You learn a bit more, you do it again. And then also in terms of like, in terms of remixing, you've learned this concept about like, like generating pop particles, but can you now grow it onto a different shape? Can you make them grow at a fixed rate of 10 particles per second, or can you grow it once in the first frame and then turn it off? And all these different ways of just trying to like, you look at a single concept and you try and look at it from every possible angle, and you watch a video, you read a manual, you download a HIP, you try and make it up yourself. You just think of just like trying to expose every possible aspect, every possible angle of a particular piece of knowledge nugget, and then you try and remix them into other things. Constantly testing, constantly showing stuff makes you learn stuff. And so this little example here, I thought was probably the best example of me doing that to myself, where I saw this launch video for, let me turn it down ahead, where X Particles put out this whole thing about like doing like really cool branching structures and kind of grid networks and stuff. And I thought, that's so cool. And I thought, but surely you can do it inside Houdini with POPs, right? And the answer is yeah, you can. That's really hard. Well, okay, it's not really hard, but it was a great way to test if I knew what I claimed to know, which is, do I know Houdini? Do I know particles? I don't know. Let's go find out. And I think the other thing that I really wanted to kind of like demonstrate with this whole thing, because if you really want to know the secrets, fine. There is there is a hit, and here are the key points. Fine, go away. You can pull these things out, but as much as I'm sort of try to play down the whole kind of like learning aspect of it, and it's like I'm really trying to help anyone. I'm just doing it for me. No, I want to help, and I want to kind of I found the learning journey for myself of going through this whole thing really interesting and really kind of like this is a fun exercise, and it was a struggle that I'm glad that I got through it, and I want other people to kind of experience that and to go through the journey themselves. And so this whole thing of going, okay, well, a lot of the middle of that demo was just we're starting with just like a square. Well, even then, like, what's the fast way to make just like a pure square outline? And I went, well, no, a grid, but a grid is kind of awkward because it has like the wrong amount of sides, and you can never easily get to just the edges. And I've got a circle that just has four corners. There you go. That's perfect. And I can turn it. It's just like a weird way to solve that problem. And then, trying to do like sort of basic noise. And I think, I even write here that I said, I had done it before, but I wanted to see it if I could do it without reading notes. And I did all this before reading the book, but that's exactly what this woman says is like one of the most effective ways to learn, which I found really, really, really funny. And just failing. Like most of this page here is about me just like constantly making mistakes, but each mistake kind of, when I found the right way, reinforced the right way in my brain. And and I just like kind of just more mistakes and getting it wrong. But like each time getting a little bit closer and trying this avenue, and then that's wrong. I'll pivot and I'll try that way. And eventually, I do get there, but there's like a lot of swearing through it and a lot of like a lot of days and a lot of stuff. But but the end result is that, I've now got all these concepts sort of locked in my brain in a way more stickier format than I think would have done if I just downloaded X particles and played with these things. Like I think, Houdini is definitely has a, especially Houdini artists have a deserved reputation for just being like the most irritating kind of just like, wanting to reinvent everything from scratch and, taking like the slowest possible path through any problem space. But I think that's because at a certain point you do become just curious about everything. You just want to learn all the things, and every problem is fascinating, and you want to just play with it. And if I could somehow, I do get paid to play with concepts, and it's so cool. And I think all of this kind of writing is just me trying to express some of that joy and excitement about learning a thing. that reminds me. Sorry, this is my last bit, and then you can.
No.
Stop talking. When I was working with that with a sculptor, and we'd just be like chatting away as we're kind of like working on his pieces, and he was asking me about like, so what you do, and I kind of explained some of what I thought were kind of formative experiences in my childhood, and he kind of stopped and went, so basically you just want people to acknowledge that you are like a very smart little boy, is that it? And I went, yeah, I think it's part of it. I think that's probably a really key part of it. And I've just I like to solve a thing and then be able to share with everyone, saying, look at this is so cool, and give me some partially reflected glory. But it's the glory bit is fun, but I think it's more just like the the simple glee of of solving a thing or finding something kind of cool and fun and going, hey everyone, look. Yeah. Does that make sense?
For sure. No, 100%. Yeah, no, I think that, like for me, I really enjoy just helping people in general. Like, I think that's just something, and I think you kind of alluded to that a little bit, where it's like, yeah, there's a bit of that, like, oh, I'm doing this to write down my own information and keep notes for myself. But really it is, like you said, it's about helping people. And, you wouldn't go through all the effort of doing it this way if you didn't want to be able to help people as well. And so I think from that standpoint, like I just love being able to help people and being able to, share information. Like for me, I just get so excited when I see someone else understanding something and seeing someone else start to process it in a way that's like, oh, okay, like now you're getting it. Now you're starting to get excited about the thing that I'm excited about, and like let's kind of move on together in that direction. Like I just is so fun. I love talking to students specifically, like in whether it's in high school or what, usually in higher education, but they just get so jazzed about things when they start to understand it, because they're like, holy crap, I'm learning something. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. Like learning is cool. It's not lame. Like it's not lame to be in school. Like
Yeah.
you have like your job is the coolest thing at the beginning, where it's just like you get to learn whatever you want and no one's mad at you and you have no other responsibilities. Like just go and have fun. Like, you know what I mean? That's what, school is. Like if you find art exciting, go do that. Go learn a crazy ton about art. If you find math exciting, go do that, So
Just sort of copy this thing into
yeah,
the chat.
yeah.
Oops.
I'll paste that
That
there.
Yeah, got it.
But yeah, so yeah, I think it's just it's just interesting to to kind of see people. It's just really that's something that's really rewarding for me, is to see people starting to get things. And one thing that I think we've talked about it a little bit was like, I think you did a talk in 2018 at SIGGRAPH that was, I'm guessing you must have been at a point where you started doing the teaching stuff a bit more at that stage in your life, I think, and you were talking about that. And I had just recently started teaching, at a small local university thing, and was starting to do that a little bit more, and having this mentality of like, well, I wasn't able to be a successful X, Y, or Z, so now I'm a teacher, and like, okay, I'm like had that kind of over my head. And I remember in your talk, you were talking about some of the ideas of like, no, it's like being a teacher isn't like a failure. It's not like you can't do this thing, so like now you're over here doing this thing. Like you gave, I don't even remember all of the points, but I just remember coming out of that being like, yeah, I can do this. This is cool. Like this is something I can actually get. I can feel proud of and feel like I'm doing something, and like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be the one making these movies, but maybe these kids I help will go out and make movies and do things and stuff like that. So like, that was something that was really interesting. And technically I actually came up to you and I was like, thanks so much, and like chatted with you for a second. And I was like, I mean, I would never talk at that point. I would have never talked to anybody, because I was just some guy from a small studio, but it was cool. Like that was a really inspiring thing for me to have, like that I think about all the time. So, it's just interesting that you never kind of know like which, what things are gonna, I don't know. It's just interesting. It just was that was a moment for me to kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, teaching isn't lame, and learning is cool, and like you don't have to just make movies and make, cool commercials and stuff, and so.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's, everyone, every CG school, everyone, the vast majority of people like to just complain about the teachers, and it's uninspiring. And even you speak to the staff, and oftentimes they're like, oh god, it's just so hard, and we don't have enough resources. And I get it. I get it's hard, but by the same token, I've been very lucky that I've been able to sort of teaching comes relatively easy to me, which is a really wanky humble brag to say. But also, you speak to most people and they can all kind of say, oh, you ask almost anyone, can you recall one teacher that you found really inspiring? And almost everyone has that, not just in CG, but in everything, in high school and primary school, you found, the one teacher who found, your particular spark for X, and that just made it kind of, something really made sense. And it was amazing. And I think, that's such an amazing thing that you can, when I was teaching, and I got to have that moment a lot, and it's so kind of intoxicating. It's great. And I think, um, I wish, uh, this world was a more, you know more balanced world where teaching was more valued and got paid more, on a similar level to, crazy tech things, because I'd be there in a heartbeat. I want to do that,
Yeah.
if I could, but also got to pay a mortgage. So, um, but I'm also kind of glad that I did it for a short amount of time, because I think if I had done it for long enough that I started to get jaded with it, I would hate it. And
Yeah.
I think, um, I plan to go back to it one day. And I think, maintaining the website and the wiki is my sort of version of that. And every time, side effects ask me to go out and do a talk, I relish it. It's that, I was saying to someone commented to me, saying that they like hearing my talks and all my sort of like talking way too quickly and all the ums and ahs and stumbling, because they said that my excitement over it is palpable. You can see that I just want to get all this information out, and I want to
Yeah.
say it as fast as I can. And there's definitely a part of that. Like, I might have told you this other sort of like story. I'm all about, bougie anecdotes, Peter. I'm sorry.
No.
But I remember the the first time, at Animal Logic, when, they said, "Oh, Autodesk have asked us, can we do a talk about Gatsby?" And we had just finished Gatsby, and they said, "Look, Matt, do you want to do it?" And, my, super upper middle class sob story is that I had a bit of a stutter during primary school and high school. It was actually quite a bad stutter, and I've always had a thing about public speaking. So for a long time, that whole concept is totally foreign to me. I thought, no, I can never do that. But they asked me to do it, and I was quite excited by it. So I prepped all this material. But then in the 10 minutes leading up to actually sort of going out and meeting all the people, I had like an absolute panic attack. I was getting like really, really nervous. But then I kind of realized, actually, in this cinema where they're holding this event, I remember being in the cinema like 15, 16 years ago, when I was like sort of a young fresh-faced kid wanting to work in this biz, and seeing kind of Weta come out and do a talk, and just going, oh my God, they're sharing all this information. This is amazing. And it was a really inspiring talk, and it's so cool. And then I thought, hang on, I've got like a ton of awesome material in this this keynote talk. Um, if I were me 15 years ago and someone was about to come out and see the stuff that I'm about to show, I'd just lose my mind, because this is just like all the information that I want to learn. I don't know. And then, when I kind of came around the corner and saw all these kids age like sort of, like 19, 20, 21, like young and keen and kind of like grinning and excited. And I thought, oh man, I'm gonna blow their fucking minds. And I just went into it's not like maximum attack, Matt, where it's a thing that I've done a few times. And I did it at this last SIGGRAPH, where I'm always worried that I'm going to talk too quickly. So I always have like sort of bonus slides backed up. And I had like basically 3 full presentations worth of material backed up. And I got through all of it, because I just like, you gotta see this, you gotta see this. And that sense of just kind of like excitement of wanting to share information and to, help, it's never left me. And
Yeah.
I love it. So
Yeah.
So
I get the same thing with a lot of students. I mean, that's a big part of like my job, is going to talk to schools and students and things like that. And it's super fun to get to chat with people in industry and stuff like that. But like you've said, there's always this like, you're 20 years in, and there's this level of like jadedness that kind of rises up in you after a certain number of years. And those students don't have that. And it's so fun, because they're just, it's like, yeah, you'll figure out the annoying things. Like you'll figure out what's a pain in the butt, but like this stuff is really fun. And there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do. And kind of, I just love seeing kids just get super excited about everything. And just like the most simple things you can show them, and they're just like, what the heck? This is so cool. Like, and it's great. It's so fun to get to chat with that kind of age group. I think you're right. They have this like On a whole, they have a real excitement and readiness to learn and to kind of get more or whatever. So I think yeah, it's totally true, 100%. Um, so the one thing that really interested me when we had we're kind of messaging back and forth, you put something on here that was like that said why specific things don't interest me, and I would love for you to touch on that because I think that's really interesting. You have two things in here that are, it says flip and long render and long renders. I like that flip is in there with long renders. Care to elaborate on that at all? I'm just kind of curious on that side of things.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the flip side, I think, stems back to a very specific job that I worked on. Um, so this is all pre-Genius. This is in London, maybe 17 years ago, where we were doing an ad for iced tea, and it involved a chameleon that was talking about the difference between cold tea and iced tea, and then at some point drinks the drink, and they wanted like sort of like a splash of color to go down the body of the chameleon. And so we're doing all these tests, and I remember at the time thinking we should be using Houdini for this. This is what it's for, but we just didn't have time, so it was faking it with all kinds of stuff. And at some point they said, it just doesn't feel splashy enough. And can you do something involving like actual kind of splashes to stuff? And I went, yeah, it's probably easy to do. Like I've heard about this software called Real Flow. We'll get it. And so we rather bought it, or we got like a month license of it or something, and did it. And like the first result, it's amazing. It's just you put it in, it's almost real time. You get like splashes swirling through the shape, and so it's really cool. And then they wanted to art direct it, and I went, this is where it goes to shit, because it is so realistic. It's like you're trying to art direct an actual hose, inside a shape, and just saying, can you make the water bounce off here? And it's like, I mean, if this were like an actual, transparent fiberglass chameleon, and I had a hose, would you ask me, can you make the water bounce up here? It's like, you can't do that, but that's what they want because it's CG. You can do anything. And that was like 3 weeks of staying up until like 4 a.m. just staring at these sims that wouldn't go through, and just thinking, I fucking hate my life, and I'm never doing sim again. And so I got out of sim for years. And then the other side of it, in terms of like long renders, my background was always doing commercials for a very long time. And commercials, no matter what, it's got to be short, fast renders. You just don't have the kind of luxury of big, long timelines. I mean, if film, obviously it varies, but in film you can sometimes say, this render is going to be like kind of 4 hours a frame or 8 hours a frame. Everyone goes, well, don't do it again, you cheeky so and so, and you let it run. And just having sort of like Animal was RenderMan based in the early days, and that was back in the dark days of peak point clouds. So kind of the period of rendering before modern path traces. Disney, Pixar worked out these, and ILM together, I think they all worked out these cool techniques of you can take your scene and you can rasterize it into a point cloud and store information, and then you can take that point cloud and transform it to make another point cloud and make another point cloud. So basically, to do Guardians of Ga'Hoole, the Owls and Helmets film from 1,000 years ago, you wouldn't see renders at all. You would set up RenderMan and Maya to bake like 20,000 point clouds, and then like cross your fingers and hope that RenderMan would do the right thing, and then you would assemble the render in comp. So there'd be like a static point cloud for the set, animate point clouds for the birds, another point cloud for feathers, and that's all just for AO. Then there'd be point cloud for indirect diffuse, point cloud for like the caustic of the metals, and a point cloud for, and just these things are just built up and like all divided into static and animated. And other times, if they're too big, you'd have to break it out into like subsets. And if the camera's doing a particularly like swooshy move, and this is directed by Zack Snyder, so of course there were no swooshy camera moves. It was like you'd have to then like sort of you have to separate out the primary camera from your point cloud baking, and just like effort, and just it was just like data management. And I thought, this isn't the lighting that I've done for the last 20 years. This is just like boring, and I hate it. And so then I think that was a big inspiration for when they developed Glimpse. So Max Liani was like just one of the smartest guys I've ever been in the radius of. And he went, I'm going to write my own render. And I went, yeah, Max, whatever. And then he did. And then it was like the best renderer any of us had ever used. And it just came out of his brain. And it was pure path tracing. And it was fast as hell. And because he could sort of like tune it for the building and for those shows. So we just got used to these ridiculously fast render times. And you go, oh, lighting's fun again. And then got out of that all and went back to, what everyone was used to using, and I went, oh, this is just too slow for me now. Like I was so spoiled by using Glimpse. And I thought, rendering now is what other people do. And just as I sort of got into doing effects, I went, oh, great. Now I just don't have to worry about it anymore. I'll just stay in my lane. And I think both those two things I hate for the same reason. Like it's just too long. And so and Flip, I just don't see the fascination. I don't know why people like it so much. And it's amazing that on every show where we've needed Flip and it looks like I might have to pick it up and go, oh, no, is this the show? Someone else says, I'll do it. And I went, he'll do it or she'll do it. And
they've got it.
Yeah. Bishop should go. And they always do it. And just like every now and then I kind of play with it thinking, maybe now it's better. And so do I say no? Basically, no, it's never better. It's always the same length of time. And I go, this is boring for me and I hate it. Rendering only now is just starting to get to a point where I can think about playing with it again for fun. I'll do it for work. Of course, I'll do it for work. But in terms of sort of it's also why there's so few kind of high quality renders on the wiki. I just can't be bothered. I just this is just, if I can see the end results in from the OpenGL view, I can and I can get it sort of in a grainy still. It's like, I've done enough. I've kind of proved it to myself. I can't be bothered anymore. So
yeah, for sure. People, I just had that happen, I think a couple weeks ago, where somebody was like, hey, do you do like tutorials on rendering and stuff like that? And I'm like, or like, do you touch that? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, we'll play around with it a little bit tonight and see how it goes. And it was just in my mind was just a total disaster. I mean, like I'm not a texture artist. I'm not a rendering my whole job was just basically give me data to render, right? Like that's what I used to always do in the studio I worked in. So it was kind of like, yeah, I think I could play around with a little bit. And it was just like, forget it. This is it was like pyro and stuff. And like, it just was it was just a mess. So yeah, I feel you on that for sure. The rendering thing, I like Flip, but that's just because I like simulation. I like simulating anything.
Well,
and I'm
I
just
gotta go now. Bye.
Don't worry, just you send it to me. I'll take care of it. Like I'll do it.
There you go. See,
it's funny that you brought.
You always find a person. You always find a person who likes it. Yeah. And I've had a person who likes
there
it.
You go. You found it. You're just. I'm a little far away. You have to fax me the data to be able to work with, because it's small data too, right? That you're always working with in Flip. It's always really.
Oh yeah. It's
like a couple thousand points.
I can probably find that old chameleon mesh and I'll send it to you and you can sort it out.
It'll be great. It's funny that you brought up RealFlow, because that was like my first introduction to like somebody saying, I wonder what Urban's thoughts are on this. Yeah. If you need explosions, talk to Urban. But RealFlow was one of my first introductions to like the simulation world. And now when I look at that, I'm like, I don't like, I kind of remember it a little bit, but it's this like hazy like dream of like, what was that? There were demon stuff in there. Like they're demon things that they had. It was all this weird, like it was really esoteric as well. Like it's funny that like people are like, oh, Houdini's the hardest thing to learn ever. And like, I look at that and I'm like, that was really weird. Like that was a weird piece of software. Like, I mean, it's just funny, like how just certain things get these like oh, this is the hard software to learn. But everything has
Mm.
these weird little, I don't know. I just remember that in like it was decades ago probably now, but yeah, it
Yeah,
was
yeah, for sure. No, because I mean, jumping back a few topics to link it to this one in terms of education, I always get a little bit thorny when people say Houdini's hard to learn, because I don't think it is. I think in terms of all the 3D packages, to me, it's one of the easiest because it's so, for the most part, internally consistent. I mean, that was always the maddening thing to me about Maya, and I consider myself a Maya expert back when I was using it, but the fact that you know the there really is no Maya. Maya is actually like 17 different programs that are all sort of under this kind of loosely bundled collection called Maya OS, but it's not really that. So the fact that I can, there's little things like I got really good at using paint effects, but none of that was none of that knowledge was in any way transferable to anything else. And same with like the old Maya cloth versus the new Maya cloth versus Nucleus when that came out versus my feels like everything was like a totally new paradigm, and even then like nothing was discoverable, like everything was buried under menus and you have to know exactly which menu to get to, and that to me does make it easy to learn. That just makes it arcane, and almost like linking back to the other concept, the other thing I was ranting about the whole make it stick thing of like you can't learn concepts, you can only learn by essentially by almost like kind of manually highlighting menu entries and go, I must know where this exact menu is, otherwise if I lose it I'm never going to be able to do this effect again. So
I wonder if that is kind of at the crux of why people think that Houdini is hard to learn, because it's more about discovery and it's more about exploration than about like just rote memorization of like where this menu item is. And I think you can get so used to that, right? Like I'm thinking about like, okay, there's a way to do something in After Effects. There's like maybe two ways to do something in Photoshop, but like there's like thousands of ways to do things in Houdini. You know what I mean? Like at certain situations. So like I wonder if that's part of it as well.
yeah, maybe. And I think the other I don't want to alarm you, Pete, but I'm going to make a labored analogy for Houdini. You ready? This
Okay.
this will be good. I do often go on about learning Houdini and learning a musical instrument, and to me, it's like kids like kids who pick up guitar. We'll just ask how do I play Stairway to Heaven, or how the thing of what my kids currently play. Like they learn the bass line to Walk This Way, or to some well-known song, and because it's a simple little pattern, it's like four notes, and they can play it and go, look, check it out, and but that is all they can do, and so like they go to like a music shop and there's a guitar and they'll pick it up and they'll play the same shitty fucking four notes, and it just drives me mental. But then for for kids who are like a little bit more kind of interested, they'll get a bit more into like the theory, and they'll learn some scales, and and it's it's a dark journey of just where you're picking up all these concepts, and none of it is as cool as just learning how to play a cool AC/DC lick. But then suddenly you can see chord structures, and you understand, like a 145, and how to do like a cool minor seven, jazz, E over B flat kind of something, and just like you learning the fundamental concepts kind of frees you up in a way to do more kind of like expressive things than you would ever get if you just learnt every exact note for note recreation of an Angus Young solo. And that is my Houdini analogy in terms of it's I think I have started some of the years back when I was teaching at the university of kind of saying like this is almost like a bit of a contract. You have to agree with me that these first few months are going to be dry and slow and boring, but believe me, this will do you good in the future, because it will make you more expressive and be able to do more stuff than you ever could have done before. Here is a box stop, and you start from that, and and here is a wrangle, and just from absolute first principles. And then it's boring and shit and slow, but you can ramp up to cool stuff way more quickly if you understand the fundamentals. And it's almost like a boring trope now. If you see every second question on on Reddit or in the Discord or in wherever saying, how to learn Houdini, I want to do flip, I want to do pi, I want to do blah, and all the sort of grizzled old war veterans go, well, kid, you really should be picking up stops. And he's like, no, flip. Okay, fine. You do you, and we will meet you again in 2 months' time when you come back and learn stops and go, oh shit, you're right, I should have learned stops. And I don't know, like Houdini is almost its own worst enemy there in terms of like all the sort of like explodey stuff is so sexy and so appealing. People just want to get into that so quickly, but you wonder if there is a learning path where you take some of the amazing setups Urban has done. And I think even like his talk he did for Hive was kind of that in terms of like he showed the really cool result and then showed how elegant his intro stops are into it, and how he's like thinking of it and setting up. He does probably the nicest pre-stops into a sim setup I've seen of anyone, because they're both like very clear, very short, but very expressive, and they could do lots of stuff that you. But there's something there. There's something in that in terms of like how you link the cool, sexy stuff back to the fundamentals and try and make them talk. Because I think a lot of the existing learning material for the stop stuff covers things that people don't want to learn, and the pyro stuff always starts way off in the deep end, assuming you know all that, and they don't meet in the middle. And I think Urban's shown a way that you could make them bridge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think now that in like for that it's specific, like particle sourcing is kind of the way of doing pyro and things like that in Houdini. And so really it's all about attributes and points and things like that, actually, that are all SOPs based, right? It's all attributes, points, geometry, stuff like that, that's sourcing into those simulations, right? So I think that is always what I point to particularly, is like, learn these basic concepts, right? There's attributes, like you got to understand what an attribute is. You have to understand how you can kind of manipulate it in the different various ways that you can do that. Like you said, that's kind of the boring stuff. But once you kind of just push past that, you start to unlock things where you see somebody do something and you're like, oh, okay, they're just making an attribute on that. And you already like kind of have that in your brain where you're like, oh, right, I get what they're doing there. So it kind of helps you to move through all these different things. Like flip, for example, like there's a stage there where you're dealing with particles, right? Like it is volumetric and particles, but if you know how to manipulate attributes on points, great. You're like a good portion of the way to knowing how to do some stuff right in there. So, and there's always going to be these little branching pieces of knowledge that kind of go off of that, and you have to kind of like explore into these different little realms and stuff. But I think those are things that are good, like baseline things to get started with. I don't know if you have any other like thoughts on that, because that gets asked so often. It's like, where do I start, right? It's so do I memorize all of the nodes? And I always say, no, don't do that. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things that I thought were interesting. One was Michael Linden wrote a really interesting post on his website a few years ago now, where he, I can't remember if it was on the side effects examples or if it was on his own work stuff, but he basically interrogated all the hips to get which were the nodes that he used the most, and rattled off the first 10 and said, well, clearly these are the ones that you need to know. And it was, wrangle, an add sop, attribute transfer, I think it was. It was like a few others, but you go, yeah, actually that's like a perfect way to get into it. And it's almost like you want to kind of like say, okay, now if these are the 10 nodes, let's even go to like the first 5 nodes. What are the coolest, funnest things you can do with just these 5 nodes? And that's kind of, you're in. You go, look at this. The other angle of that is a guy who is so I'll do this by way of a plug, just because it's the only way you get to see this guy's magic, is when people like support me on Patreon or PayPal, you get access to the Discord, and I should be much more what's the word, policey about that in terms of like making sure people pay every month. I don't care if people like give me some money. Is that you get keys to the Discord, and one of the users there, Stephen Walsh, who I can never remember that's his name. I just know him as Swelsh. Swelsh is like another guy who I don't think he had read that Make It Stick book either, but he's naturally a really good teacher for just doing like endless, like quite almost like borderline cruel tests on people. And saying, so you people all say Vex, huh? Well, how about this? And he'll show like the sexiest little kind of like kind of motion graphics thing, very much inspired by Bees and Bombs. I don't know if you know that guy.
Oh, let me see. No, I don't know that one.
Oh my god, I forget his last name. David something. He's an Irish chap.
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't know how well this will play on the stream.
Yeah.
But does these like
cool.
beautiful things.
Oh, I just saw that on there. Yeah, I saw him doing that swirly box thing. Yeah.
So he's been doing this like nearly every day for like 5 or 6 years now, and like the mostly built-in processing. I think he did a couple of days where he's using Houdini, but mainly he's a crazy JavaScript OpenGL guy, and they're just beautiful things. And a long time ago, I did some things on OddForce where I tried to replicate some of these things. We still find it. OddForce, Bees and Bombs. Where I just find ones that looked kind of cool, and I thought I will try and recreate them in Houdini. So I just like kind of posted a hip, and people would and I got sort of like more of them, and they got like sort of fancier and fancier. And then others got involved for a bit, which was good fun. But then I got busy and I stopped. But that kind of went on for like 7 pages of this. It's still a really good resource, I think. And this is amazing because I built them all sort of back in Houdini, whatever it was. And Robert Hodgkin, also known as Flight 404, went through and updated all of them to work with the most recent build of Houdini, which is amazing. So
wow.
He fixed up all my files for me, which is so cool.
That's fantastic.
But I mean, this strikes me as another good way that of just like sort of, you talk about sort of Vex stuff and people's eyes kind of glaze over and go, I don't learn Vex. And even my sort of like joy of Vex stuff, I tried to make them interesting and sexy, but I'm not a designer. And, again, I was like partially just trying to bang out the answers as fast as I could. But these kind of strike me as like everyone looks at these things and just go, oh man, that's cool. What? And you can do that, I could do that in 4 lines of code. Oh my God, I'm going to learn this. Maybe this is the other way. And, and it also strikes me that almost any of these, if you just like then made this a base emitter for Pyro, like, holy shit, that would look incredible. So
yeah, right.
So that's your homework, Pete, for the SideFX education team and the docs team. Just do this.
Just
make
do
every
all of
example
these?
Beautiful and sexy. It's all this. All this easy.
How often does he? Oh, okay. Does he post a new one every day?
Pretty much, even like multiple ones in a day, which is funny.
Yeah, that'll be easy to get through all of that stuff. Well, that's a drink. Yeah. That's not processing. Yeah. I don't think he did that in JavaScript.
You do that one as well, please. You wanted to talk about renders. Oh my God, I can't close this window. Go away. This guy. So he's done. How many posts he done? Where does it show the stats on his?
Who knows?
How many tweets? Oh, there you go. 8,576.
Wow. Okay. Posts. They're not tweets, Matt. Come on. Get with the times. We're not on Twitter anymore. Sorry. We're on X.
Sorry.
You can replicate all of these. Yeah, it'll take a minute.
Yeah. But yeah, they are super cool.
No, that is really cool. And I think that kind of goes to the thing that you were saying before about, giving yourself, hey, do I really know this? Do I really know how to do this thing? Right. Where it's in that same vein, right? Where you're saying, okay, I can see somebody's doing this. They've got whatever way that they've created this visual. But now what about me? Like how would I go about doing this? Maybe on a simpler term or whatever.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I
and I
think it's
think
interesting. Yeah.
it is, and I made reference before to a lot of the talks I do for Physiograph get sort of like bitchy YouTube comments. But the one that by far got the most bitchy comments was when I intentionally made a very clickbaity headline for it, which is Houdini, you're learning it wrong, and here's how to do it right. And the point I was making was that again, like weird that I was pushing down this path before reading the book, but the whole kind of the message in that video was saying like everyone can follow tutorials. Everyone's done, Nipping's Rigids 5, but they all show exactly the same thing on their reels, and all it shows is that you've bought a tutorial. It doesn't show any employees anything about you or why they should hire you versus the other guy who's also done the exact same tutorial. What are you going to do about it? And so about the thing of like, can you demonstrate that you actually know this? Can you? So like the example that I kind of made for the thing where I really picked on one of my students was um, he showed me his render, and it spent hours rendering this thing that looked like a bad version. It was a perfectly passable version of the tutorial. To which I said, congratulations, you've wasted 8 hours of rendering to make exactly what I could have got from the tutorial anyway. What does it show me? And I said, but when are you likely to be called in on a shot if you're working on a Marvel film where they say, hey, we've got this perfectly plain gray floor. Can you please make like sort of tracer fire hit this thing exactly like in that one nipping video? Like we were going to call nipping, but you seen the guy, then we need to do exactly what he did. And it's like, no, there's not going to happen. But what would you actually be asked to do it for? Like at the very least, you do it like on a wall, there'd be some sort of machine gun fire hitting a wall. But what if it's like a really messy wall? What if there's like a combination of like a wall plus RBD? What if there's like like a windy day? It's like it's all this stuff, right? And so I kind of like after I kind of like publicly berated him in front of the entire class for a good like half an hour, he slunk away crying. But then he came back the following day, with a render where it was like a cliff face, which he sourced from like a mega scan or something, and turned it up on its side, and it's like finally now you get. And also that we could look and go, well, this is great, but it now feels like the scale is wrong because you've done it for this like little localized plane, but now we've got a mega cliff, and it's got the wrong gravity, it's got the wrong drag, but we can iterate, we can now make this better, and you will learn stuff from all these mistakes you make. And that was that, demonstrating what he'd learned. And it took a few goes, but he got there. And that was always my thing of like almost like aggressively saying to all the students, saying, oh, we need this particular thing for the film. Here is a tutorial, but I swear to Christ, if you show me this exact same result, it looks exactly the same as the tutorial, I'll punch you. Show me your spin on it, because you have to show me your spin on it.
Yep.
And yeah, that's my rant on that.
No, it's totally fair. I mean, I've been in reel reviews and done a bunch of different stuff where I'm like, this is like I can tell within like a couple minutes usually if it's a tutorial or not. And that's, whether I've been hiring for a job or whatever, like whatever the scenario is, it's like you can show me like this, like maybe we were having interns come in or something at a job I was at, and you would see all these tutorials in there and you'd be like, I can tell that that's a tutorial. Like, I just know that is. And like, you did nothing beyond it, or it was a class assignment or something, right? Like even those where it's like, oh, look at these class assignments I did. It's like, yeah, that's great. But I know that 80 other people did the same thing in that class. So like, what can you, like you said, what can you do to spin that to make it your own unique thing and make it something that's going to show yourself in it, right? Because that's a lot of what we're doing here. It's an art, it's technical, but it's also art. So
yeah, totally. And look, and I also get it. I get that, not everyone gets to be the cool rock star senior FX guy, and sometimes you need a person just to hit the the button to make motes. But mean, surely when you're a student, you want to aim for more than that. You want to,
Yeah.
try and really showcase everything that you can be. And yeah, and that I think also comes back to the bigger picture of, do what I say, not as I do, but try and be the most well-rounded person you can be. And like another good friend of mine, who is an FX lead somewhere, and he's saying that he's really noticing the more recent generations of kids, the kids that are doing effects, just only know effects and nothing else. And so, when it comes to just like the fundamentals of, have you actually watched any movies in the last 20 years? Like, you do understand basic shot design, right? Like, you do know the difference between like, different kinds of lenses, and like why you put, like if you're matching a cut, like, on this shot the lighting is here, and on that shot the lighting is there. It's like just fundamentals of stuff.
Yeah.
Because, but that also seems to be sort of going away. And it's not like you have to be an expert in everything. God knows, no one can be an expert in everything, but you just want to be like a little bit aware of stuff outside. And the other thing that kind of annoys me a bit is, I don't know how this became a big just vetch session, but
no,
just the sense of like people asking for, how do I do this, and clearly no effort has been applied for looking it up. I'm always hovering over the unsubscribe from Reddit, Reddit Houdini, because it's rife with that. And so funny. We just see like, there's a lot of clever people hang out there, and we're all witnessing, at least once a week, someone says, I want to do flip, how to flip, or, I want to learn Houdini, but, what, where do I find resources? Where literally right next to where they've written it is a thing where the person who maintains that Reddit thing has put, here are top 10 resources for learning Houdini. You just think, when did reading comprehension, like, if my 9-year-old did that to me, I'd get annoyed. And these are clearly people who are, they have access to a computer. They must be like, 19, 20. Like, it's like, even like some people will go, oh, they're probably like, teenagers, like 14, 15. It's like, no, fuck you. I would tell my 9-year-old, no, come on, you can read. You can, I've seen you type, Mr. Beast into like, a fucking, YouTube search bar. You know how to find information. You get 0 passes here. Like, but if you say, I'm trying to do flip, I was following this tutorial and I'm getting stuck here, I'm all in, and I'll help as much as I can. But just that sort of, someone show me the button. It's like, I hate it. I hate that so much.
Yeah. No, for sure. I have that in reverse sometimes, where I'm like, have I, I feel like I need to like write a PhD level dissertation before I can ask the question of like, I'm really stuck on this thing. How do I do it? Like, I get that way with like, because internally we chat with the developers and stuff like that when we're making courses and things like that. And I'm always like, I don't want to ask these people, like, this is such a stupid question, and so it's funny because like, I think people like, I think if you are in that world, sometimes you can actually get paralyzed the other direction too, where it's like, oh, I don't want to ask anybody this because I don't want to even seem like I'm stupid and can't figure this out, and B, like, I don't want to bother them with this question. This is obviously really dumb. But I think what you said there, which is really interesting, is like, if someone has shown that effort and that information, you're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's get you to learn this because you're willing to put the effort in to try to figure it out. So let's get you to that point. And then, an interesting thing that someone had said to me is like, if I answer this question for you, like me specifically in this case, because I'm like doing training and stuff like that, that's going to answer questions for 100 people. So I'd much rather answer your one question and not have to answer all 100 of that same question infinite time, these infinite number of people that are going to come ask. So it's just interesting to like reframe some of those things too for people. Like for me, like I'm way more likely to not speak up, to not ask a question. And like, I can feel a little bit nervous about those types of things. I relate to the panic attack before coming out on stage kind of a thing. I like the first time I ever did anything at SIGGRAPH, which was 2 SIGGRAPHs ago now. We did like a really simple like education presentation, and then I did like a Houdini battle thing, whatever. And I went to bed at 7 o'clock that night because my adrenaline was at such an insane level. I literally came back to my hotel room. My wife was on the trip with me, and I was just like, I'm going to bed. I'll see you in the morning. And I literally slept all night because I was so insanely stressed. But like those kind of I think there's that kind of people too that are learning this, where it's like, oh, I don't want to bother anybody, and I don't want to like talk to anybody, and like I'll just learn it on my own. And like maybe if I'm like struggling to, like, I think it can be hard to realize that people want to help if you've put the effort forward. So I think hearing those things too can be really helpful for those types of people as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Animal, the lighting department there, they had a great, like a very sort of like structured process for doing that, which I'm sure everyone has. But for the record, their vibe was, if you are stuck on a problem, try for like 20 minutes to 40 minutes, in that sort of window, which would be around 30 minutes, to solve it yourself. Here's a bunch of like, internal resources and websites and stuff to go to. If you can't sort it by then, ask the person next to you. If they can't sort it, ask your lead. And if they can't sort it, like put on onto like, the chat and stuff. But it was like a very sort of structured way to say, you can, again, the same thing. This whole makes it think of like, you want to struggle a bit first, because, if you struggle and then you find it, you got to remember it more the next time around. But also in a work context, your time is valuable. And so, if you spend, 2 days trying to panic research it yourself, when you could have timed out after half an hour and said, hey, look, I need a hand here, then that's when, it is tricky, trying to balance all these different forces at play. So you don't want to waste people's time, but you also don't want to be a waste of time yourself in terms of, you struggling for days and days and days to solve a problem when you just ask someone and they tell you within 2 minutes, you're now not, you're not worth your paycheck, if you're not actually delivering shots on time because you're just in endless research mode. It's curious balance.
Yeah, for sure. It's always tricky. And I mean, that's, I think that's true in so many different workplaces. I personally, I came from a small studio where it was just me that was the Houdini artist. And so the person to ask the questions to was me, and that was it. Like, I was just like, I'll ask myself that, I guess. And when you're the Houdini artist in a small studio, I think that you automatically become the, how do I do anything guy, right? Like, oh, I'm struggling with this in Cinema or in Maya or something. Like, hey, what do you think? And you'd start to go like, yeah, I can help you with your questions, but like, who helps me? Like, where do I get help from? I used to run into that all the time, which was like super annoying, but tough to. So I think, there's always like that balance of like, when do you go, where do you go? Who do you ask? But I think just knowing that the community is I think pretty willing to help, especially if you've put in a moderate amount of effort.
Exactly.
So, I think that's really, is definitely an interesting balancing act to always kind of be able to like, be able to, kind of balance. But, Matt, I know we're getting close to 2 hours here, so I don't want to take too much more of your time, but, I guess maybe before we kind of sign off and kind of end this thing, do you want to just maybe plug your site again, just so that people know kind of where they can find you, what they can, all that kind of a thing. If someone isn't familiar with your stuff somehow, I don't know, maybe they haven't gone online in a while.
So I did see my web provider's dream host said, hey, you can get blah.xyz. And I thought, that's like the first domain name that actually sounds kind of useful. So I got it. And then I couldn't work out how to do the whole proper site redirect thing. So it just defaults back to this standard shitty thing. But but I mean, like, weirdly now it's quite handy that if you do just like go to the Googles and type in CD Wiki, it does actually tend to do the right thing. So
nice.
Oh, look at this. apparently we're hanging out, Pete.
Well, yeah, I know.
Um, so, and it's funny like how far the site goes down before it starts to come into other weird things. Like my SEO through no actual effort is actually pretty solid. So if you can't find me, you're not trying very hard. Then the other one though is that if you do search by name, let's see if it still does it, because this makes me laugh every time. If I type Matt Estela, oh no, it's me.
Look at that.
Yeah, normally it goes to the carpenter guy. Oh no, it's on YouTube. So if we go to YouTube, let's do it again. Matt Estela, and the answer is of course, did you mean Matt Estela? Yeah. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's not you.
That's not me. Yeah, I mean, I've got the similar size forearms and biceps, but apart from that, it's not me.
You're big into woodworking and you know, you have a big yeah. Oh, I knew, I've always known that about you. Well, yeah. So I mean, as far as your like you were saying, if you're a Patreon or whatever, you can get access to your Discord and stuff like that as well, right? So
yeah. So I covered both of them. My Patreon page is just amusingly bleak because I never actually think to put any work on it. So the last post is from 2020, but really it's just about getting some cool Discord access, which is fun.
Yeah.
And like I said, Steve Walsh is there, but a bunch of other great people there that are always willing to help. And yeah, I just find it pretty cool that I think I started my off the cuff intro at the Hive of saying that, you know, I made hips and gifs and silly text, and then suddenly I'm in LA talking to people. It's amazing to me.
Yeah,
this is a pretty cool, blessed life I lead.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you 100% there. I mean, I just started doing this stream and teaching stuff to people, and then a couple months later, I'm at the Side Effects headquarters and I work there. It's really weird. It was like, how did that happen? You know what I mean? It's the same thing where you're like, are you sure? Is this, I don't know. Maybe this is an accident. I don't know. But,
yeah, I do keep waiting for the penny to drop and someone to say, actually, yeah, you don't belong here. Please leave. But,
yeah. Can you what are you doing here? How did you get in here? Who let you in?
So hasn't happened
yeah,
yet.
it's definitely that imposter syndrome a little bit, but yeah. So well, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us today on the stream. I know we had to kind of work out some timing stuff for us, so I appreciate that. You know, I know it's late for you, it's early for me, you know, other sides of the world kind of thing, but I
we made it
super
work.
appreciate it. Yeah, I really appreciate it. You know, thanks to everybody too for joining us today. And I guess I don't really need to cut you free. We'll just sign off from here. And yeah, thank you guys, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you. I'll actually be streaming tomorrow. So we'll be doing some Mops Mondays and talking about some motion graphic stuff. So hope to see you guys then. And Matt, thank you again. And it's great to talk to you. And yeah, bye, everybody. Have a great night or day, whatever time it is. I don't know. Bye.
Nice.